In this video, we're going to be talking about chronic hypothermia specifically. In the previous video, we talked a little bit, brief overview about hypothermia in general, as well as a little bit of information about chronic as well as acute. But in this video, we're just specifically talking about chronic hypothermia. The most chronic hypothermia deaths that occur are in between the 30-degree Fahrenheit range to 50-degree Fahrenheit range. So just because it's above freezing doesn't mean that you can't get hypothermia. In order to survive hypothermia, the best way to do so would be to prepare to prevent it in the first place. Recognize it if it does occur to either you or one of your party members, and then know how to treat it immediately. There are two devastating factors that contribute to chronic hypothermia. The first one is dampness, which can reduce the insulation of clothing and cause evaporation heat loss. The second one is wind. Wind can rapidly strip away body energy by the increased convection of heat loss, the so-called wind chill effect. There also is an increased risk of hypothermia in case of injury, especially if the individual is going through shock, or if the individual does not do a high level of pre-trip physical conditioning, adequate nutritional and hydration status, avoiding exhaustion, and availability of adequate insulation. An initial response to cold is the clamping down of the surface blood vessels. This prevents heat from being conducted to the surface by the blood and effectively increases the thickness of the outer layer, depth for increased insulation. Those who become profoundly hypothermic concentrated their blood volume into a small inner core. The amount of dehydration in these individuals can be absolutely profound. It could be up to 5.5 liters of fluid lost in that individual below 90 degrees Fahrenheit in your core. And that's equivalent pretty much to the entire circulatory volume. This fluid loss not only comes from the vascular space, but also from fluid between the cells and within the cells as the body slowly adjusts to the continuing heat loss by shrinking blood circulation into the core and increasing the thickness of the mantle layer. At this point, rapid, sudden rewarming can lead to rewarming shock. In chronic hypothermia, rewarming shock and loss of metabolic control are the causes of the death. Treatment of the chronic hypothermic victim is to prevent further loss of heat. This generally means providing shelter and/or more adequate clothing. The victim is exhausted and thus requires rest and food. The victim is dehydrated and needs fluids. You want to make sure that the individual does not drink coffee. If the individual can stand, a roaring fire can provide adequate controlled heat. Since chronic hypothermia victims are exhausted, they will not be able to exercise themselves to warmth. Exercise is a method of generating heat, as in shivering, but when energy stores are consumed, exhaustion commences and significant hypothermia will begin unless further heat loss is stopped. If for some reason you or the individual cannot be evacuated, add heat slowly to avoid rewarming shock. Huddling the victim between either you or two other individuals in an adequate sleeping bag may be the only alternative, depending on how big your party is. Another trick that you can do too, which is kind of a pro tip, is chemical heat packs can be added to the individual to help offset further heat loss. But you want to make sure that you take care in doing so, because you don't want to burn the victim with the heat packets. Alright, that's all I got for chronic hypothermia. Thank you all for watching. I do appreciate it. If you did like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Take care.